I'm Michael Vermita, the President and CEO of the Westchester County Association, the leading economic development and business advocacy group in the Lower Hudson Valley. Welcome to the latest edition of Business Insights, our exclusive content collaboration with West Fair Communications, publishers of the Westchester County Business Journal and Fairfield County Business Journal. Before we get started, a special thanks to the Westchester County Association's Platinum sponsors, who make this event programming possible. COVID-19 poses an unprecedented challenge to our regional economy. At the same time, the post-pandemic environment presents an opportunity to identify our challenges and refocus our priorities as we build towards a stronger future. At the pandemic's outset, the WCA convened a post-pandemic working group comprising some of the region's most dedicated professionals. In order to address these issues, we will shortly be issuing our post-pandemic working group strategic report, which will identify 4 foundational pillars of economic recovery, together with targeted initiatives designed to achieve material and tangible impact. Now, one of the clearest pathways of enhancing smart growth and rebuilding our economy is by harnessing the power of public-private partnerships. At their best, these are economic accelerants, and they can act as force multipliers for our regional recovery. Nowhere is that more apparent than in New Rochelle, where our local and county officials are working in collaborative partnership with businesses and private developers to reinvent and reinvigorate the city, bringing jobs, growth, and opportunity. Today's program features the leading players in that successful endeavor. Now I'd like to turn things over to our moderator, Peter Katz, longtime business reporter at West Fair Communications, who will introduce our panelists and get things going.
Thank you very much, Michael, and it's a pleasure to be here for this exciting event. Exciting because I'm going to take something that's very often bandied about as almost a cliche, public-private partnership. And I hope we'll give some meaning to it and perhaps set the stage for you to become involved in public-private partnerships to the benefit of not only the public, but also your private businesses. And let me introduce our panel today. First, we have David Garton of RXR Realty. Now, David is the Senior Vice President of Environmental, Social Governance, and Infrastructure at RXR Realty. Welcome, David.
Great. Thanks for having me.
And Louis Aragon is the Development Commissioner in the city of New Rochelle. And you'll see in just a minute how Louis and David have been working together on many things that fall under the category public-private partnership. Louis, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me.
And we're also joined by Deborah Novick, who's Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Westchester County. And welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Peter.
And let's plunge right in, because today Louis has prepared a presentation which is going to give us an overview of some of the exciting things that have been happening in New Rochelle. And also, if we're lucky and technically everything works out, we'll get a chance to see some really great promotional videos that New Rochelle has prepared. So Louis, why don't you begin?
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for having me here and for the opportunity to share with everyone in Westchester the wonderful partnership between the City of New Rochelle and our master developer, RXR Realty. It has been an incredible journey that began in 2015 with RXR that really has recreated and reshaped the future of New Rochelle. I like to always start when we talk about what we've done in New Rochelle with the end result. And what I mean by the end result is what New Rochelle is going to look like in 5 or 10 years. And we have a quick video that shows what it is going to look like. But I want you to know that this is not fiction. These are real projects that have already been approved. So with that, Mike, if you could start the video.
30 minutes from Manhattan, there's a city on the rise. With 12 million square feet of development, set to become modern retail and office spaces. and high-quality housing. With energy-efficient designs in the heart of a thriving downtown. To attract entrepreneurs, innovators, and artists. Welcome to the new Rochelle. Your city outside the city.
So that is going to be our skyline in the very near future. But why are we able to do that? There's one very simple answer. We're in Westchester. It's really the right place to be, right outside of New York City, in the tri-state area. And that really is the secret as to how and why we're able to accomplish what we have accomplished. Because at the end of the day, there are 10 million people surrounding us. Trying to move another aspect of this is transportation, which is true for New Rochelle, but also true for the entirety of Westchester. In New Rochelle, we're lucky enough. I always try to take credit for this, but it's really not because of me. We're going to be connected to both Penn Station and Grand Central. The tracks happen to split in New Rochelle, and in essence, we're going to become Grand Central North in Westchester. So, in preparation for reaching out to the private sector, because we knew that in order for us to accomplish what we needed to accomplish, it had to be a plan that was grounded in reality. It could not just be a plan that a bunch of civil servants like myself put together. He had the business world had to understand it and embrace it. So we did all of the studies that we normally do in order to accomplish this. But we did one thing that I think was really crucial to get the community to buy into it. We partnered with Columbia University, the Urban Design Lab, and we had about 100 PhD students descend upon New Rochelle, and they created this wonderful report which showed to New Rochellians what we could be, what New Rochelle had the potential to be. And that is really what opened the minds of New Rochellians. And I think that in many ways also helped RXR and the private sector understand our potential. So the next step was we wanted to show to the community that we were not changing that entire city, because honestly, who wants their entire city to change? We really focused on explaining that we only wanted to change 3% of our entire footprint, which was our downtown. So that is really was a really a great way to approach the community and say, let us do these changes here, and that would help finance everything else that we need to do in the rest of the city. And I'll talk a little bit more about that down the road. So that's when we issued a request for expressions of interest, and we're lucky enough to have RXR respond. Thank you, David. And it is with them that we put together a plan for the development of 12 million square feet of new construction, which includes, already approved by the way, 7,000 new residential units, hotel rooms, office space, and retail space. So I have to admit that it's going much faster than we expected. And also have to say that occupancy of the buildings that are now leasing have exceeded all expectations. Now, the key thing that we accomplished in doing this was one very simple word: certainty. The goal here is to create certainty for the investor. We created standards for agreements within the downtown overlay zone, and we created benefits that developers knew to expect. They know exactly what to expect from us. There are no negotiations. It's very clear as to what they're entitled to. And I think, David, you agree with me that this was key in attracting investment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's working. This goes under careful what you wish for. We have 32 projects currently approved, some more in the hopper. 6 projects are completely. We have, believe it or not, 11 concurrent construction sites. 7,000 residential units, which have more than 1,000 affordable units in them. So it's really exciting to see the cluster of projects and how it's shaping the future of our city.
One thing, Luis, just to add, and to your point on certainty, right now we're all operating in a world that is really uncertain. And I think the forward-thinking planning that Luis and his team and the mayor and the city of New Rochelle have done have really positioned the city as we're trying to navigate what is an unprecedented time, and that's an understatement, from a public health crisis, but a colossal economic crisis right now, where you have almost 20% unemployment here in New York City, where I'm working out of. Their forward thinking, their planning, thinking ahead of time, has really positioned New Rochelle in many ways, Westchester County, to recover in a way through this economic crisis than if they hadn't done this in the past. So it's by no means a certainty, but in terms of that recovery, but definitely in a better position than it was if they didn't do it.
Absolutely. This slide is just to show you how different the projects are. We go from a prefab 6-story building to a 48-story tower. So we are really embracing everything, all different vocabularies. There's a site for every type of developer. We're really looking to continue to have a blended and a mixed community. Now, this, I think, is the most important slide in all of this presentation regarding the partnership. Because when we went to the community, we said these projects are going to be, are not going to create a burden for the city. And they're going to, we are not going to have to carry the weight of the residential real estate taxes. So if you take a look at this, the column to the left shows how much revenue would be generated by the sites that are currently approved on this project, downtown New Rochelle, over a 40-year period. So those projects would have generated, if we had done nothing, $75 million. The same projects, the same sites, during the same 40-year period, with the investment that's being made and including the tax abatement period, will generate $750 million. So it's a jump from 75 million to 750 million. So this is how we're going to pay for the potholes, the policemen, the firemen, for the many next generations to come. So this is an investment in the future. It's something that we understood here in New Rochelle, and it's something that our XR understood, that this investment was going to yield this bright future for our city. The other part was that RXR and the other developers understood that they needed to give back to the community. And that's when we created this non-discrimination policy. And part of that is really trying to find jobs for New Rochellians. I am proud to say that in the year and a half that we had the center open, the First Source Center, we have had 878 New Rochellians go through the center, and we have placed over 600 of them in jobs, and 268 of those jobs are here in New Rochelle. We're very proud of the work that we've done. The jobs range all the way from working in retail to working at construction sites to working in law firms. We have a little bit of everything.
Luis, was it difficult to get the developers on board in this, in giving back to the community, or did you find a certain amount of altruism on their part?
Well, the thing here, Peter, is that when you buy into the overlay zone and what we set up, this is what you get. You can't pick and choose. You buy into it, you buy into the whole plan, and you have to participate in all of it, not just some of it. So it's working. We have over $4 billion in investment in our city. Affordable units. We attracting over 12,000 to 15,000 new residents to a very small downtown, and we are investing over 50 million in infrastructure improvements. So bring it all together. How did we accomplish this? The first thing was removing politics from the process. And I give so much credit to our elected officials because they understood that in order to create certainty, we needed to remove politics from the approval process. The community was involved from day one, and it was with the community that we created this vision. So there was buy-in. The third part was, as I had mentioned before with that slide with the 75 million, the 750 million, it is that it pays for itself and then some. So New Rochelians like myself are not carrying the cost of these developments. And then lastly, but certainly not the least, the creation of a zoning code that was easy to navigate and helped us achieve what we needed to achieve. We adopted a form-based code. I encourage all municipalities to look into form-based codes and really look into adopting it. I know that many already have, but it really makes a huge difference. There's a little bit of a delay on the changing of the slides. And okay. So the next challenge that we have is quality of life. So here we and the developers, because they're building these buildings and they want them to be occupied. So they want to promote, they wanted to sell and give the quality of life that we're promising. So that becomes very, very difficult because we are in the process of creating it. If you come to New Rochelle today, there are 11 construction sites. I'm not quite sure that I can tell you the quality of life is the best. You will be in a couple of years, but we need to send that message out. So another quick video so you can have a feeling as to what life is and is becoming in New Rochelle.
30 minutes from the heart of New York City is a place surrounded by parks, woods, trails, and miles of waterfront. And downtown is just down the block. A place to live where you feel most alive. A place where small business is anything but small. And where you don't have to starve to be an artist. A place where eating local means Caribbean, Italian, South American, Asian, and Eastern European. And where your nightlife is around the corner from your day life. 30 minutes from Manhattan is a place to call home. Experience the rebirth of downtown New Rochelle, your city outside the city.
It makes you forget what that other city, what's the name of it that's down New York. After all, we don't need them. Westchester's here. So a lot of campaigning that we really have focused on in really sending the message. This is just to illustrate some advertising that we did pre-COVID on Metro North to really help spread the word so that folks understand that the Westchester option is the option that they should consider. And I have to say that Yonkers has also done a wonderful job in doing the same type of promotion. Here in New Rochelle, we are of the belief that transportation, the first and last mile, is of the utmost importance. And when you compete with New York City, where there is public transportation, other than the overall transportation in Westchester, which is large buses going, through cities and connecting cities, we really didn't have anything locally. So we adopted Circuit, and we have these very cool shuttles that people can hop on and hop off, much like Uber, but they're free of charge, and they circulate around downtown, connecting people to the train station. It's been very successful. In a post-COVID world, I'm actually very happy that we chose these because they have 6 doors. So you actually enter and sit. You don't have to climb over anybody, or you don't have to be close to anybody else. So it's good in terms of social distancing. And they continue to be heavily used. Mike, the slide is not changing. I'm sorry, can you change it? Okay. Uh, uh, Creating open space is also a huge challenge for us. There's not a whole lot of space. We're so densely developed. And working again, public-private partnerships, we are redeveloping and re-envisioning open spaces. This here's Anderson Plaza. This is a partnership with Walden Balter and L&M. And they're completely redoing, redesigning, and reimagining this space so we can be better utilized by New Rochellians. Next. Bike and ped planning, so important, creating a friendly and safe pedestrian linkage. What is shown here is a connection to the train station that connects to a pedestrian bridge that we just opened that cuts over I-95, creating a safe pedestrian connection between the train station and our developments. Next. Our train station, so wonderful, such a beautiful building. We have really focused on investing in the train station so that people, when they commute into New Rochelle, they have a good experience. We have completely redone the station, all the way from bathrooms to restoring it to its original colors on the exterior, and we're now putting signage. We put art on the interior. We have created a co-working space on the second floor, and this was in partnership with the county. And we have new cohorts coming in. It's really changing the whole vibe of the train station, and a place where we really want millennials to feel at home. Next. We're back to bike and ped planning. We are now embracing scooters. I can't wait. We're now before council to get scooters approved so that we can bring that mode of transportation to our city as well. Next. Now, the link, it's something that I wanted to mention because we're so proud of it. That was a $10 million grant that we received from the governor. And we're able to to re-envision a highway that was created in New Rochelle and it was never finished. I call it the Highway to Nowhere, Memorial Highway. And we are repurposing it and creating a linear park. Next. What you see is on the top is Memorial Highway as it is today, and what will be in the near future, where people can just come out and enjoy. I think that the High Line is nothing compared to us. Not that I'm competitive at all, but this is going to be really fantastic. Next. And here's just an overview of what the link is going to do. And this is connecting developments in downtown to our affordable housing cluster to, the business district and right by the hospital, of course. Next. So that's it. So, I mean, in summary, this is really an accomplishment that I am so proud of, but I can't say enough that this could have not been accomplished without the help of RXR and our other partners. What we didn't include here is a program that we now have, and we are working, this is in partnership with RXR, which we call Rebound New Rochelle. And we're giving grants to businesses. I have just signed off on 25 grants that we're giving to different businesses, ranging from 10,000 to a little bit more of that, depending on the application. But we have a pot of money that was between our own funds and RXR funds, and we're so happy to help businesses during this period where it's so important to help them rebound, for them to stay afloat. So with that, back to you, Peter.
Well, Louis, I wanted to ask, does the city itself place great importance on the public-private partnership in bringing developers in? I mean, you can expect as a large city in a county like Westchester that developers are going to be interested. But what is it? What kind of attitude is it that the city has, and what does the city offer to attract developers? And then also, perhaps, David, you could jump in on the same thing. What are the particular elements that have caused RXR to go above and beyond just putting up buildings and moving on to some other community?
David, let me just start, because it is, to me, it's two things. One, we're open for business, and it's not just a cliche. We mean it. We are here, we're open for business, we want to work with developers. And the second element is certainty. We created a framework where developers know exactly what to expect. There are no surprises, it's very transparent, and they know what they're getting themselves into. Wouldn't you agree, David?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's some factors, inherent factors with the New Rochelle that make it very appealing. As Luis mentioned, the proximity to New York City and the access to Metro North via the train, soon to be in Grand Central and Penn Station, a walkable downtown, a diverse city, a city with a lot of history. But really one of the biggest factors, one of the key factors in terms of attracting development is not only the certainty that Luis spoke about, but leadership and having the vision. And that was key in developing that kind of certainty. So you have all those sort of inherent advantages of New Rochelle. And in New Rochelle, like many sort of suburban downtowns, some of those downtowns have seen better days, right? As through the 60s and 70s, as people became more mobile with cars and had less sort of a de-densification. But now the market is looking for those sort of live, work, play communities. And as I mentioned before, given what the city did and the process that they did in 2015, and the work that we did with them, has positioned them in a way to continue to move forward, not only through this current economic crisis, but continue to grow. So hopefully the downturn won't have a severe impact. And keep in mind, New Rochelle was the epicenter of COVID here in New York very early on. And we'll see how that recovery goes. And so far it's been great. Now you mentioned sort of our role, or why do developers want to take sort of this play role in this public-private partnership. I think the word that you used was altruistic. I actually, when you think of a successful public-private partnership, and you mentioned it has to be more than just a building, right? We're a long-term investor in New Rochelle, so we obviously want to find a really great space and put up a really great building and lease it up as quickly as possible. But that's kind of short-term thinking. If you really want to be a long-term investor and you want to see the long-term investment pay off, that includes not only caring about the individual project that you're working on, but it's the community that you also want to be a part of, and try and make sure that you build stronger communities. We believe that we're actually a stronger community, a stronger company when we have a stronger community. And so that not only means working with Luis and his team and the mayor and the city administrator, It's working with a variety of different groups and continuing to work with groups, not only through the approval process, but throughout development. As Luis mentioned, there are 11 buildings that are going up in construction right now. While many people will think that all 11 are ours, they're not. But at the same time, we have to continue to work with the community through that construction period. And then when it's over, when we're operating those buildings, we still, it's incumbent upon us to care about those issues, not just that affect RXR directly, but those issues that affect RXR indirectly. So I'll just give you an example when it comes to the coronavirus. When, as I mentioned, New Rochelle was the epicenter early on, in late March, we had a conversation with the city and simply said, what can we do to help? And I think everybody was, just ourselves included, were so shell-shocked, and we were shelter in place and trying to figure out what to do. So we said, you know what, let's go ahead and establish a relief program. And so we did a $1 million COVID relief program in which we set aside $1 million, first focusing on those emergency needs like food insecurity, childcare for first responders. And then we're now moving to the phase of how do we exist in this new world where we have to figure out ways to coexist with the coronavirus, but still move forward. And that's where the Rebound New Rochelle program came in. And that was a brainchild of Luis and his team, and we were more than happy to support it and help New Rochelle small businesses start on the road to recovery.
Now, Deborah, we see what's going on in New Rochelle, but the county, of course, goes far beyond just the borders of any particular municipality. So how do you apply the same principles of public-private partnership at a county-wide level?
Thank you, Peter. Well, I think it really does build on all the same kinds of things that Luis and David are talking about. We can have a certain overview understanding of what's going on in the region, in the county, and know that there are a lot of places that need help, but that we can't solve all those problems on our own. So one of the key things that we try to do is be a connector of information, gather information, find out what's happening in different places, and find out what's working, what different chambers of commerce or town governments are doing that seems to be working, and then share that information out to others so that they can benefit. So I think a key thing is being a connector from an informational standpoint. And just sticking to the current moment in time, I can give some examples from coronavirus. The very first thing that was obvious was that businesses were struggling, right? Businesses had to close. People were talking about layoffs and furloughs. And the federal government was creating programs which were complicated and difficult to navigate. So the very first thing we did was realize that we could be effective in helping small business owners apply for the different federal programs that were available. And we recruited an army of private people, of business people around the county who volunteered their time to be trained on those two programs and their applications. That's the PPP program and the EIDL program, and then volunteer their time to help business owners complete those applications. So I would say that's a version of a public-private partnership. We had the idea of it. The money was coming from the federal government. That's the public side. We recruited business people. That's the private side. And we got them together with the struggling business owners. That was the first element of what we called our crisis advisory program. Then the next thing that we did was we put on a series of webinars so that business owners would have a place to gather and learn how to put your business online, how to do digital marketing, how to set up e-commerce, how to build a website, how to stay calm in such a crazy time, how to make good decisions when you're under so much stress, how to renegotiate with your landlord if that's something you need to do. So we put on a series of webinars, again, with local talent, local business people who had expertise in those topics. We made those webinars available to the whole business community. And we kept the content online if you couldn't attend on the very day that we were hosting it. Those webinars are actually still on the Catalyst website if anyone needs to listen to them. We did a huge survey of the business community, and that gave us a lot of insight into what kinds of needs people were facing. And again, we enrolled all the chambers of commerce, the legislative bodies, the municipal mayors, all kinds of business networking groups to make sure that that survey was really, really widely disseminated and that we got input from all corners of the county. And what that led to was actually a really big public-private partnership that I want to talk about with RXR, because what we uncovered as a result of that survey was that business owners really needed some one-on-one help. They had issues that were not necessarily being resolved by the webinars we had put on, and not necessarily being resolved just by the money that they may have qualified for from the federal government. So we knew that there would be an opportunity to match business talent, again, calling on the private sector here. We have a very, very rich business community. I don't mean rich in dollars. I mean rich in talent, rich in expertise in a wide range of industries, wide range of professions, different sectors of the economy, different levels of expertise. And we thought there would be a way to match up the business owners that needed help with the business people that knew how to help. But we were struggling a little bit to figure out what would be the best way to do the matching. It wasn't hard to gather the volunteers together, and it wasn't hard to gather the business owners who wanted help. But it was a little bit tricky to figure out how to match them up in a cost-effective, time-sensitive way. And luckily, someone told me that RXR was already doing the exact same thing. It's really part of their whole commitment to the communities where they operate. They know that if the community is not stable, it won't be good for their business, for their buildings. And so they had actually put together a very similar program already. They were ahead of me. RXR Volunteer, they had an online platform already built where volunteers could apply to help, and business owners who needed help could apply for that help. And I have a task force of people doing the matching. And I was so grateful that they agreed to expand their efforts to include the whole county. It was originally focused on New Rochelle, where they have a footprint, and the other communities outside of Westchester where they have a footprint. But now we're in a co-branded partnership. We supplemented the task force of matching people, of the folks doing the matching. We put out a broad call for volunteers, volunteer business people from around our county, and a broad call to alert business owners that this opportunity was available to get one-on-one help. And it seems to be going really, really well. We've matched everybody from Westchester who's come through has been matched with a business owner who, or not necessarily a business owner, but a business expert who can try to address their questions. And I'll just give a few quick examples. There was a nonprofit that needed some help planning a virtual fundraiser to offset the loss of revenue from their in-person fundraising events. And, you know, their annual gala reception was canceled due to the quarantine in the early spring. So we were able to match them with a volunteer who helped them plan a virtual event. Another example, a small restaurant food truck operator needed help setting up e-commerce sites so they could take orders online since they weren't necessarily doing business the same way they always had been. That's sort of a theme. There have been a lot of brick and mortar businesses that have had to switch to online ordering, drop off, pickup, delivery, since dine-in had what ended up being closed for so long. There's really been, I want to give a shout out to the business community. I see a lot of creativity. I see a lot of business owners really rising to the occasion, seizing whatever opportunities they can find to pivot their business or expand their way of doing business, partner with other local businesses. I spoke to someone today who wasn't able for many months to appear at the farmer's market, but figured out how to drop off her product at a small cafe that didn't sell competing items and direct her customers there. So without opening her own shop, she was able to get her product, you know, in the hands of her loyal customers. So there has been really a lot of creativity. But I know the theme of this is about the partnership, and I really can't thank RXR enough. They showed a lot of foresight in getting that RXR volunteer up and running so quickly, and we were so thrilled that it turned out to be just the right tool for us to use to service the county more broadly.
You know, Deborah, you mentioned that you're open for questions at the county, and we're also open for questions right here. So if any of our viewers have questions they'd like to ask or need information on a particular item, please, just below where you see the video, you can just type in right on a computer the question and it will be transmitted to us. You can do it whether you're watching Facebook, YouTube, whatever vehicle you happen to be watching on. Just type in any questions you may have right below where you see the video. And Luis?
Peter, I just wanted to add something that I think it's important as a follow-up to what Deborah said. I'm so proud of the work that we've done here in New Rochelle together with RXR, but we need to really understand that we don't exist in a vacuum. We are part of the County of Westchester. And I have to say that if it wasn't for the public partnership between the city of New Rochelle and the county of Westchester, we couldn't have accomplished what we have accomplished. I mean, County Executive Latimer, John McDonald, all of the staff there has been such an incredible support in guiding us down this path. And not only with them, but also partnerships with other cities and sharing information with other cities and really brainstorming with them as to how we can redirect and reposition the entire county. The Westchester County Association has been an incredible resource for us, as has the Business Council of Westchester. And it's all of us together that are working toward achieving this ultimate goal. So I don't want it to appear that this is a New Rochelle thing, because we are not alone. We are part of a much larger team, and we can only succeed as part of that team.
Well, the question, of course, is how do you expand that? How do you reach out? How do you involve, let's say, a mom and pop business or a small size developer or a large office operation that happens to be in the county? How do you reach out and create public partnerships there? Anyone want to tackle that?
Well, I can tell you what I have been trying to do, and the county has helped me with that. I've been trying to connect with other municipalities so I can go to them and explain to their elected officials what we've done here in New Rochelle in trying to open their eyes and helping open certain doors so that those connections can actually happen there as well. And I have to say that some municipalities have done that. Portchester has just adopted something similar to us in trying to do that, and was maybe 2 years ago that I went to talk to them. And we've been trying to do that a lot because there's no secret here. We want to share. We want to help everyone, not only, to be honest, in Westchester, but in the Hudson Valley.
Can I add something to that, Peter?
Go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, I think what Luis is saying is really the right thing. The key is communication and sharing information. It's so easy. We're all so busy, and everyone's, let's say you're a municipal official, you're so focused on your own municipality, and I'm sure you have issues that arise every single day, or if you're a business owner, you're focused on your business, your employees, your clients and customers. And so what ends up happening very frequently is there's a lot of siloed activity. And one of the things that's the hardest is developing communication and collaboration, whether it's across municipalities, across industries, across town. And Bridget Gibbons, the Director of Economic Development, likes to say all the time that the most important role that we can fill is as a convener. And I think that is what I'm talking about, this idea that if we get people together, if we can take the lead in getting people together who share common interests but maybe don't know it, and help them get to know each other and learn from each other, it helps. This whole idea of sharing information can only happen if people know each other and they trust each other and they're willing to do it. And so I do think it's really important to convene, to gather people, whether it's for events or, whether it's in conferences, whether it's in small group meetings. I know we can't really meet nowadays, but, small Zoom sessions or big Zoom sessions with breakout rooms, on sometimes we gather on a theme. We have quite a few task forces that we lead here at the county. I run a biosciences task force. We have an entrepreneurship and innovation task force that is responsible for having launched the Element 46 program, and we're getting ready to launch some other programs. So I think if we can get people together with like interests, it does help with the sharing, and that's where these good partnerships can arise.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things, and I think the pandemic and the economic crisis has highlighted, put a big spotlight on the need for competent and strong government leadership. And you have that not only with the county, and you have that with the city of New Rochelle. And I know there are other municipal leaders throughout Westchester, and I think that is going to help position Westchester in terms of the road to recovery. And Deborah mentioned sort of the RXR volunteer program. One thing to her point of convening and sharing information, that platform was born from the idea that in times of crisis, people they usually rush to help, right? If you're here during 9/11 or you're here during another crisis, hurricane, superstorm, Sandy's, people want to help. But we all had, because we wanted to slow down the spread and bend the curve, we all had to stay home. And thankfully we did that collectively. Our collective efforts did bend the curve, but you still had this need of people wanting to help. And so that's where RXR Volunteer came from, of how can you take those professionals with that particular expertise and then link them up with a small business owner or a nonprofit, and help them not only navigate from the federal programs to how to reposition the business. In many ways, it's trying to activate, from a digital perspective, what Deborah just described, and they do it at a much bigger level that we can do. And so we're very grateful that we're able to partner with them. But the other thing that you mentioned, there's the role that government plays, right? And the topic is public-private partnerships. It doesn't have to be either or, right? Big things, great things happen when you have alliances and you have organizations, public and private, working together. And I think that's what you see playing out in New Rochelle. From a developer standpoint, not only do we care about the community of New Rochelle, but when we heard through our approval process, and we continue to hear so today, how do we build equity in the community where we operate for many of those existing residents? We want to bring in new residents, and the city wants to bring in new residents, but you also have some existing residents and New Rochelle residents that are excited about the development, but they're also concerned. And I think too often developers sometimes maybe overlook issues of displacement or gentrification. We actually don't shy away from talking about that because those are real issues. So how do you take the development that we're doing and help the small businesses? How can they capitalize on the new economic activity that's going to come from the foot traffic? How do we make sure that we have a construction process and a bidding process that ensures that local companies and local small businesses have the ability to be a part of it? And then there's the local hiring, which again requires working with the city, working with the building trades, working with organizations and advocacy groups that have been pushing for this. And it's a constant communication that too often when you don't have that communication, it starts to break down. And luckily, we have that partner with the city, with New Rochelle and Luis, and with the county. And I think having that communication, that partnership, is what actually makes a successful public-private partnership.
Well, how do you overcome the typical animosity between a business and a government? Typically, business people may feel overtaxed. They may feel overregulated. They may feel that they have to jump through too many hoops and have too many public hearings before they can get a site plan approved. How do you overcome that so that you can create genuine public-private partnerships?
So I can go ahead.
You want to take a stab at it, and I'll go ahead?
No, I just want to share what we did here in New Rochelle at the very local level. We actually created a position internally called the business ambassador. And the business ambassador does just that. She is the link between our businesses and government, helping, explaining to people what needs to get done, how it gets done, holding their hand, walking them through the process. So it's a good experience and not a bad experience. That has proven to be very successful here. David.
Yeah, the other thing, look, from the private perspective, we're a for-profit company. We've never shied away from that. We take great pride in putting together a high-quality product and offering that high-quality product. I think what's really important is being transparent on what the development can achieve. And I think what Luis and his team with the city, and this goes with the business ambassador with other developers seeking to do business with the New Rochelle, Luis mentioned the certainty. And so having that certainty early on addresses a number of the issues that some private sector entities are a little leery when it comes to development. But when you have that conversation and that transparency and openness of what is the city trying to achieve, what is the private sector trying to achieve, and then you have that discussion and that negotiation of how do you get that alignment, and ultimately you figure out how the win-win. It's not an either or, it's a win-win. And as Luis outlined in his presentation, it is possible, but it takes a lot of time and effort up front. I mean, look, there's no doubt we have spent many hours, not just community board meetings, it's going into churches, it's going into libraries, it's having as many conversations as we can, because that's what's required. It requires not only conversations with Luis and the city, but it requires conversations with the local residents. And ignoring that or trying to bypass that, I think ends up dragging out the process.
And at the county level, Deborah, as the county gets involved in biotech, helping to develop things up in Valhalla, for example, do you see more opportunities for the county itself to reach out to developers, to business people, to laboratories, to medical operators, and to Westchester's public that might be a little skeptical and might think of county operations in that regard as nothing more than giveaways of tax money to private developers, private businesses. How does the county plan to approach the future?
That is such a big question. I'm not sure I can answer all those parts. Interestingly, I used to be the director of the incubator at New York Medical College, BioInc. So I was very tied into the startup community in the biosciences sector, and it's thriving. So it's very exciting to see that the startups that are there have continued to grow since I've been gone. And in fact, some of them have been doing great work during this healthcare crisis. But I do think that for the sector to thrive, and it has been kind of a priority sector for the county and a lot of organizations around the county who have all been very supportive for years of getting that incubator up and running and making the biosciences sector very visible, not just in Westchester, but in the whole Hudson Valley. There are some other projects on the drawing board, some in the private sector. You know, Robert Martin has made a commitment to, what would I say exactly, transforming or devoting some of its real estate to science-based companies, adding some flexible lab space. And the North 60, which is a piece of land that is partly owned by a private developer and another many acres, 60 acres owned by the county, there has been a lease that's been negotiated to make that county land available to this developer to put up a biosciences campus, a whole live, work, play community right near the incubator, near New York Medical College. So that's a significant partnership between the county and this private developer that is really dedicated to the sciences and to the belief that industry will really grow here. And the piece of land, the North 60, is actually fills in a lot of the space between where Regeneron has their headquarters and where New York Medical College is. And where Robert Martin has their buildings that they're planning to devote to the life sciences. So it really creates a dense cluster geographically in that particular region of the county, although there are, of course, pockets of biosciences activity all over the county. You have Acorda Therapeutics in Ardsley. I know of a lot of startups in different people's garages with scientific inventors all around the county. So I don't really have anything to say about tax giveaways. That's not my area of expertise. I'm sorry. I hope that's not the case. But I do think that the life sciences and the biosciences are really a great sector for high quality jobs that fit in well with our highly educated workforce and really be a diversification of the local economy that'll put Westchester on the map. So that's all I can say about that.
We do have a question.
Can I add one thing on the issue? And I don't want to talk about tax giveaways, but I do want to talk about the slide that Luis put up. And the slide, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but the sites of the downtown overlay zone and the redevelopment sites. With no development, over 40 years, those sites would have given off about, $72 million of tax revenue. With development, it's now, 650?
75 to 750. Yeah.
It's
So-
about
so- So thinking about that, if you think about that from the standpoint, right now, government coffers, and we're hearing it from the governor, and we hear it from every single municipal leader, we hear it from the city, they are in dire need of federal assistance, right? In dire need of just assistance in general. It's because that, as those coffers have gone down. If New Rochelle hadn't done the work that they did in terms of getting and providing the downtown redevelopment plan, the impact that they would have had to their tax revenues would have been dire, more dire than it is now. And so I only say that from the standpoint that sometimes change and sometimes growth can be a bit scary, but now we're in a place where we don't have a good way to figure out to educate our kids. We have to figure out ways to have a fair criminal justice system. We have to figure out ways to create jobs, and that just doesn't happen. So I think with the leadership of what's taken place in the city of New Rochelle, and I know other people are looking to replicate it, and they are replicating it, as Deborah pointed out, and what the county is doing, Westchester County in many ways is well positioned to weather this economic crisis, because New York City will be back, that little city that's just a few miles away, Luis.
That's right.
It is the greatest economic generator that the country has ever seen, and the world's most successful companies are still wanting to be here. But New York City doesn't have to solve all the challenges of New York City, because there is an affordable issue, right? That's where places like Westchester County have the opportunity to capitalize from housing, from businesses, from those startups, for those large companies maybe looking for some of their hub and spoke model and having more regional offices as opposed to just a Manhattan headquarters. So it's complicated, but what's good is that when you have the leadership that we have within the county, within the city, and other cities throughout Westchester County is well positioned to capitalize on that continued growth of New York City.
And I think that positions us well to say thank you so much for your participation today, David Garton, Louis Aragon, and Deborah Novick. I'm Peter Katz from Westfair Communications, and on behalf of the Westchester County Association, let's take a moment and thank the Platinum Partners who have made this possible. And we do thank you for tuning in, and please join us again for the next Business Insights. Take care.